How good's that? What a start. Oh, we've just covered that. All right, so after that little hiccup, on a serious note, we're just going to talk through, the talk today will be just covering as a collaboration, work with traditional owners to achieve a more collaborative approach to sea country management of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. I wanted just to highlight, obviously, some of the values and underlying principles as a traditional owner, and then also sort of cover it from a social science background too as well. And then have a look at it collectively as you'll see the synergies between all parties. There are some 70 Aboriginal traditional owner groups with cultural authority for sea country management in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. As you can see, it's going to be quite a large area to cover, pretty complex, and making sure that you are talking to the correct traditional owner group for that particular area. A bit of a definition here. Those of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander descent who have spiritual or cultural affiliations with a site or area within the marine park, or are holders of native title with that site or area and are entitled to undertake activities under custom or tradition, are termed traditional owners. This is the definition within the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Act 1975. So for us, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, who is recognised in the Indigenous community or by a relevant representative Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander body. So a bit what we covered there before, as having spiritual or cultural affiliations with a site or area in the marine park, or as holding native title in relation to the site or area, and who is entitled to undertake activities under Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander custom or tradition in the site. There's a fair bit in that. It's quite complex, but that's the challenge for us all here today, is to work through and work together about understanding that, doing the research in your own fields, but also getting to know the correct traditional owners to work with as well. But more importantly is that there's a willingness to work together for the best interest of the Great Barrier Reef. As most of you are aware, we've got the legislation framework. We've got the Marine Park Act 1975. We've got the zoning plan, came through then in 2003. The Great Barrier Reef Marine Park regulations in 2019, and within there, we have the traditional use marine resources agreements. A bit of a definition on how we then do that, and that's a bit of a tripartite arrangement with the Commonwealth government, state government, and the respective traditional owner group in the legal entity, who we determine as TUMRA holders as well for that particular site or area. So we've got some strategic alignment here with the couple of documents. But before I move on, I just wanted to cover, from the lens of a traditional owner, Indigenous heritage includes everything in sea country, including natural values, Indigenous values, and historic values. It includes tangible and intangible expressions of traditional owners' relationships with country, people, beliefs, knowledge, law, language, symbols, ways of living, sea, land, and objects, all arising from Indigenous spirituality. Traditional owners also view Indigenous heritage holistically, as everything on land and sea are connected. People and country are also connected, and to cover the wealth and well-being for each other. Traditional owners have obligations to country that create meaning and protect the health of country. The two are inseparable. So, in a nutshell, cultural obligations to conserve culturally, socially, environmentally, and economically, whilst monitoring and mitigating impacts of climate change on land and sea through traditional owner knowledge and Western science methods. Some of the strategic documents that are out there at the moment, the Reef Authority has, on the left-hand side of the screen, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Strategy. It was adopted back in 2019, signed off. It was developed and by traditional owners that informed the strategy with the Reef Authority and the members of the Indigenous Reef Advisory Committee. The intent of the strategy is to protect the cultural values of the Great Barrier Reef, and it has a set of values and principles that support the Reef Authority to work in both co-management through shared decision making and aligns to the Closing the Gap priority reform. Second one, we have the traditional owner. That's the Reef 2050 Traditional Owner Implementation Plan. And the Reef Authority has been working with the Traditional Owner Steering Group, which was made up of reef traditional owners since about 2021, and the Reef Authority supports the planning processes and now the implementation stage. The third one is the Reef Joint Field Management Program, Traditional Owner Partnership Strategy, which was developed with the Queensland Government Department of Environment Science, Queensland Parks and Wildlife Services, and the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. The big one with this one document is that it aligns to Closing the Gap priority reform too, with its focus on strengthening a strong community-controlled sector, in this case, the Indigenous Ranger programs. So the Indigenous Ranger programs obviously are funded through state government and Commonwealth government. So for us, that's really an opportunity for the eyes and ears to get out and do the work on the ground. So funding those extremely help the work and getting back onto country as well. Fourth document there we have is the Strong People, Strong Country, Indigenous Heritage Monitoring work, framework. Connecting the health of the reef and its catchment to the quality of the life enjoyed by traditional owners. It provides a traditional owner-led approach for systematic monitoring of the condition of the reef and its catchment as an Indigenous heritage asset. So these are several tools. We've just had the legislation framework, the strategic alignment, and also then some of the other documents that is used as part of the tools that can be used for traditional owners, government, and also not-for-profit organisations too, to continue to work off, leverage off those to help look at implementing programs on country. What is social science and why is it important to the reef? These are all better to answer this one for me, but I think for some of the traditional owners, you know, it's to flip it around just so that they can understand too from your point of view as well as social scientists. Just wanted to highlight that just as important it is for you to understand what traditional owners' priorities are too as well. Gain a better understanding. Social science for the Great Barrier Reef is about understanding and managing people's relationships with the reef for the health of both the reef and the people. Like all sciences, social science works to understand and describe phenomena, why or how something is occurring, develop and test a theory. A lot of it, you know, obviously what motivates people to engage in activities to protect the reef. Anticipate future trends, how people may use the reef in the future. Imagine desirable futures, really challenge and the status quo, which is quite interesting. That's good to see. And the Reef Authority uses social science to understand the human dimensions of the reef. So the partnerships, Great Barrier Reef traditional owners managing a wide range of sea country activities. Those pictures and a couple of those bullet points there speak for themselves. As I earlier described, sea country estate means an area of country belonging to a particular group. Many sea country estates and adjacent coastal areas have been mapped to respective traditional owner groups who can be contacted for information about their heritage in particular areas. Challenges there is out for you to really do your own research too as well, to look for that and find who is the traditional owners of the area. Really explore collaborative opportunities. Being brave, having uncomfortable conversations, testing. You know, you talked about challenging the status quo as social scientists. So really going in, identifying and researching who are the rightful traditional owners to engage with and partner with. You've got your own sort of community of practice as well that you can learn on. There's lessons learned amongst this as well. What works well, what doesn't work well. But the challenge is for you is to not just go to the traditional owner groups that seem to have easy to work with, easy to go to, already got systems and governance set up. There is large gaps within the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. So the challenges there is really testing yourselves, challenging yourselves, stretching yourselves, and also that's good ways that is, but also your organisations, making sure that you really put the pressure on your organisations to be able to work collectively and collaboratively with in a meaningful way with traditional owners. So a bit more, a couple of tools here that for traditional owners. Gav talked about, you know, cultural protocols and law, LORE. Talked about also that cultural obligations, respecting neighbouring clan groups as well. So there's a number of tools that you're aware of there. There's Indigenous land use agreements, memorandum of understanding, fee for service arrangements, Indigenous protected areas, native title determinations. So with this one too, the big one for us as well is to make sure that you adhere to and comply with FPIC, free, prior and informed consent. Indigenous cultural, intellectual property. Also ask for consent permission. You know, when you are going to work with traditional owner groups, make sure you ask, is it the right time? Don't sort of push your own agenda. As you know, you'd learn that real quick if it wasn't the case. The traditional owners also have a responsibility to be partner fit and ready. That's their own legal entity being set up, obviously governance arrangements, cultural protocols, cultural authority. And really consider to co-design a traditional owner-led project. Make it fit for purpose. Don't just roll out blanket approaches for the particular area. Really, the bespoke model that you're looking at is tend to tailor it for a particular area or a project. Working with traditional owners too, you can be able to do a fit for purpose arrangement. Just a little bit more on the partnerships, natural resource management, seabird strategy, feral animal controls, fire management, cultural heritage, visitor management, compliance, being eyes and ears, things like that. Communications, traditional owner groups tend to look for a lot of signage to display their areas, interpretive signage, flyers, websites now, social media. There's lots of tools to be used in that area too as well. So for us, one of the other tools that we have with the Reef Authority is the traditional use marine resource agreements. We currently have 10 accredited TUMRAs. That's between the state government, the Department of Environment Science, Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, and the respective traditional owner groups. In those yellow sort of coloured boxes on the right, they're the ones that we have accredited TUMRAs with, the 10, covering 43% of the Great Barrier Reef coastline. Of these, we've got 4 groups that receive an additional one-off sea country values mapping funding to provide cultural referral comments and establishing place-based specific guidelines to guide considerations of their values. key thing is that the sea country values mapping is a tool that's helping the Reef Authority with their decision making too around how they're using their permit systems as well. And we also have 4 new and emerging groups that they're undertaking their sea country planning. We've had earlier this year we had a TUMRA coordinator workshop. It was held on Heron Island in March. We had 11 groups with 2 representations from each group, so about 22 traditional owners attend a week-long activity. It was pretty good. We haven't been able to do one since 2019. The big one for us is that the mob were able to engage, share their experiences, talk about the impacts that are happening back home in their country, but also notice that there's a lot of similarities going on too. So they were able to, troubleshoot and work through things. It's one of those ones where you're not alone. You're able to bounce off each other and then try and apply some of those learnings back home. So the big one was creating the network to be able to have a safe and enjoyable workshop. We're just fairly fortunate that the turtles were hatching around the same time as well. So there was a lot of activity, being able to do some snorkeling and being on country there as well. So it was really, we're grateful to be able to have that opportunity, hear from the mob. With the intent of it too was to just listen to each other, talk about the TUMRA program and the Sea Country Values Mapping program in the short term, medium term and long term. How can we make improvements? As you know, there's always continuous improvements that we should be applying in things. We don't get it right all the time. It's not perfect, but we need to learn from those mistakes. And then, listen to the mob as they continue to give us frank advice back. But then really making sure that we act on it. It can't be just seen as lip service. We end up losing faith. So we have to continue to work with each other in that space. So with the TUMRA groups there too, one of the big things for us is that the groups, we end up employing a TUMRA coordinator. So there's a lot of back-end work. It's a traditional owner-led program where they set up a TUMRA steering committee that gets cultural advice for a particular area, and then obviously the conduit comes back to us and any other party that's working with them. The big one is that we don't speak on their behalf. We don't do a lot of that work. We work in partnership. We help guide and support as much as possible, but we do not speak on their behalf. That's the key thing, is that the mob will soon growl us if we were to misunderstand and represent their mob when it's not our place to be doing that. The other one is that, we won't get caught up into a lot of the, straight from the traditional owners' mouths, the blackfellow politics. Government should not be in there. That's, for mob to sort out themselves, and it's like anyone else. You got your own backyard that you need to fix up, you get that fixed up in-house. You don't let anyone else sort of come in. So really for that, just to covering up now, in summary, I'm pretty excited about the opportunities that presents for us. There's a lot of money, a lot of spotlight on the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. There's opportunities boundless at the moment. It's unbelievable. The big thing is though, is that engagement fatigue. Being smart around it, being mindful how you approach it. And the big one for mob is that they want to be consulted early, not too late once you've made up a decision and got approvals in-house. They want to be a part of the process from the beginning. That's co-designing, co-management around how they can work and have input into their sea country as well. So in closing, I just wanted to probably highlight that from a culturally, socially, environmentally and economically, whilst monitoring and mitigating impacts of climate change on land and sea through the traditional owner knowledge and Western science methods, we can see that there's a common purpose and links between traditional owners and social science aspirations. As you can see, they're very similar. Therefore, doing our collective part to create opportunities for social, economic, and cultural prosperity will go a long way to protect, conserve the World Heritage Area of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. I touched on it earlier, be brave, explore those collaborative approaches. It's in the best interests of traditional owners and your organisations too, to protect the Great Barrier Reef for future generations. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.